Captain Brad Marchand completely took over for the Boston Bruins in their weekend wins over Toronto and Columbus, all while dealing with the emotions of a death in the family. We're going to talk about Brad's big weekend, the Bruins' propensity to give up late goals, as well as take a look at the week ahead here on today's episode of Locked On Boston Bruins.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoked B. Today is Monday, December 4th, and I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins part of your day. Free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Quick reminder before we get into it, you can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins. And you can find me, my dad jokes, hockey thoughts at Ian C. McLaren. Now, the Bruins winning 2 games over the weekend against the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Columbus Blue Jackets. We're going to talk about those 2 wins and how Captain Brad Marchand was instrumental in them, and also take a look at the week ahead and talk about a perhaps troubling trend for the Bruins. But it was all about Brad over the weekend as he scored the overtime winner against the Toronto Maple Leafs and then had a natural hat trick in under 6 minutes on Sunday against the Columbus Blue Jackets to give the Bruins 2 big wins. They're now 3 in a row following a 3-game losing streak. And Brad, he's still not at a point per game pace this season, but still playing incredibly well at age 35. He's on pace for 38 goals, 41 assists for 79 points, and he's played all 24 games so far this season. Part of perhaps his, bit of a dip in production, or the fact that he's not blowing the lights out, is the fact that he struggled to, or Jim Montgomery, I should say, has struggled to find the right line combination. But since Marchand has been placed with Danton Heinen and Matt Poitras at times, he's really gone off. He had 2 power play goals on Sunday, and then 1 at even strength, which was assisted by Danton Heinen. Heinen's really thrived since being put alongside Brad Marchand. Poitras has kind of had diminishing ice time in the third period over the last few games, so it was Coyle who got the secondary assist. But altogether, Marchand has scored the last 4 goals for the Bruins, including the game winner on Saturday, which was pretty incredible broken play for the Maple Leafs. David Pastrnak came in on a breakaway. The puck ended up in midair. Brad caught it, put it down, swiped it into the ice for the game win, and we saw that iconic hand lift for the on-ice celebration. Now, something else to keep in mind with Brad Marchand is that he has these added responsibilities of being captain, and this season has not been without some drama. There was the Milan Lucic situation a couple weeks ago that he's been dealing with, carrying that load. And over the weekend, his grandmother, Frances O'Leary, passed away, and keen eyes could see after the game on Saturday that he was pretty emotional coming off the ice. He said it kind of hit him in that moment. The rest of his family, as it happened, were all gathered together at his grandfather's house. watching the game, and he brought his family a lot of joy in that moment by being able to score that goal. And a really emotional moment for him personally. And then to come back on Sunday, second of a back-to-back with some travel, getting the hat trick. Charlie McAvoy said it best by calling him just a special player. It's what he's done his whole career. It was awesome to see not only what he did in Toronto, but carrying it over to the game against Columbus. McAvoy said, quote, "He means the world to this group. When he's in that zone, we just have to follow along." So his leadership at this point, coming after a 3-game losing streak, the Lucic drama hanging over the team, he had been slumping personally a little bit as well, and he stepped up in a huge way. Coming into these games against Toronto and Columbus, he had been mired in a bit of a goal slump. He hadn't scored since November 11th in a game against Montreal, and then that was it for the month of November. He only had 2 goals through the entire month of November. He now has 4 in December, and it's only the 4th. 2 games, 4 goals, a much needed heater here for Brad Marchand. He said he wasn't really too concerned about it. He said he thought he was getting some opportunities to score every night. That's how the game goes sometimes. And in vintage Marchand fashion, he got that game winner, put on a show in front of the Toronto fans, and he's a true leader, Jeremy Swayman added. For him to take it on his back and back-to-back, they had 3 games in 4 days. That's what leaders do. He showed up. He's been doing it his whole career. A special night for him, a special night for the Marchand family, and the Bruins were all really happy for him. So, again, condolences to Brad and the Marchand family on the passing of his grandmother, but really touching to see how he was able to give his family a boost in this moment, to see the emotions on full display in the game or after the game against Toronto, and then to just come up with this monster game on Sunday. It was huge for him personally, huge for the team. They've now won 3 in a row. And later on in today's episode, we'll take a look at what is next for this team. But when the podcast continues, we'll discuss a bit of a more troubling trend for the Bruins, and that is the late game goal against. Every night around the NHL, there is all sorts of possibilities. Connor McDavid could score 5 goals. Igor Shesterkin could record a 50-save shutout, and you could win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports, because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. To achieve that, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. So, win 100 times your money by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper by choosing whether or not McDavid, Ovechkin, Crosby will record more or less on Sleeper projections for goals, assists, plus minus, and more. Right now, you can use promo code LOCKDOWNNHL to get a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKDOWNNHL to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. Thank you so much once again for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine, free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. And speaking of YouTube, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top stories of the day. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. In Sunday's game against the Columbus Blue Jackets, the Boston Bruins won 3-1. Did not have to worry about the extra man out there late in the game with a 2-goal lead in the dying seconds, which was great. Brad Marchand scoring with 3 goals, natural hat trick, all in the third period, and the Bruins were able to hold on to that lead and get the victory. During Saturday's game against the Toronto Maple Leafs, they had a 2-0 lead, which they relinquished, and then were able to go up 3-2. But for the third time this season, they allowed the opposition to score and tie the game late in the third period. For the third time this season, the Bruins surrendered a game-tying goal in the final 15 seconds of regulation, in fact, with Austin Matthews burying a one-time feed from Mitch Marner with about 5 seconds left to send the game to overtime. The other 2 times it happened, against the Anaheim Ducks and the Tampa Bay Lightning, the Bruins went on to lose. But this time, they were able to get the extra point thanks to Brad Marchand's game winner in overtime. Now, it shouldn't have got to that point, really, with a 2-goal lead and then another 1-goal lead late. But it continues Boston's trend of giving up goals with the opposition having an empty net. In fact, Boston has allowed the most goals with the opposition having their goalie pulled. The Bruins have allowed 7 goals, in fact, more than the Montreal Canadiens, who are at 6, the New Jersey Devils at 4, and then a bunch of teams with 3 goals allowed with the opposition's net pulled. There's a handful of teams that have yet to give up a goal with an empty net. The Bruins have scored 4 empty net goals, but their goal for percentage with the opposition's net empty is 36.3, which is 29th in the NHL. The Canadiens, like I mentioned, they've given up 6 goals. They've only scored 1. So they have a pretty egregious 14.29%. The Islanders are at 0, but it's only happened once for them where they've allowed a goal. They have yet to score. So it's only a small sample size there, but it's been 11 times for the Bruins where the opposition has had their net empty. They've scored 4 times, but allowed a league high 7 goals. With an 82.93 save percentage in those situations, which is also near the bottom of the NHL standings, 26. Now, what is the reason for this? What is the cause? Well, I don't know if it's a huge thing to be worried about. When you have these situations, typically the opposition has their best players out there and the defense is working so hard. So it's easy to see how a team like Toronto would have a lot of firepower out there, and eventually they're going to find the back of the net. Same with Tampa Bay, even Anaheim to a certain extent. If you take your highest end players and put them out there, then chances are they're going to get some goals. With the net empty, you get the opportunity to deploy your best players, and the defensive units are generally pretty tired if there's no penalty as well. If it's not a 6-on-4 situation, if you ice the puck in that situation, you're stuck out there and can easily get buried in, hemmed in. In this case, against Toronto, they were just 4.8 seconds away from ending it. And unfortunately, Austin Matthews happened. And when you can get Matthews, Marner, Nylander, Tavares, Riley, another high-end player out there for the Leafs. It's not the end of the world to give up a goal. You need to regroup and hopefully shake it off and get the win like the Bruins did. It is a troubling trend, but I don't think it really tells us anything about this team. We know that they are fantastic penalty killing unit. It's a similar situation to that. You just can't ice the puck, like I mentioned. And the Bruins have players that they can rely on in those situations. Just as it happens, they've been on the other end of things, but I don't think it's something that like they need to work on in practice per se. It's just getting clears. That's been a huge problem for them. We've seen multiple times an inability to get, not even just ice it, just get the puck out of the zone. Keep things simple. Don't try to make a play. Don't try to find an open man who can score. Just get the puck out of the zone. That's all Jim Montgomery has to preach here in these situations, and they should be fine. Altogether, even with those dropped points and those goals scored against, the Bruins are still tied for first in the NHL in points, and are second in point percentage with a goal differential of plus 22, which is fourth. So big picture, they're still doing just fine. They just need to tighten this up, get those clears, just get the puck an inch over the line, and they should be fine. But for now, it's certainly a talking point. It's certainly something to scratch your head over. But it's something that they can work on and simplify and clean up, and hopefully they can do that. The good news is they have those leads. They've been winning, and they were able to get the extra point here. And these things happen when you have the opposition's best players out on the ice for prolonged periods of time. Will it happen this week? Well, we'll talk about who the Bruins are set to play in the coming days here as the podcast continues. Indeed is the one hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. You can find top talent fast with Indeed's suite of powerful hiring tools like Indeed Constant Match, assessments, and virtual interviews. If you hate waiting, Indeed's US data shows that over 80% of Indeed employers find quality candidates whose resume matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job. Indeed knows where you're growing your own business, and you have to make every dollar count. That's why with Indeed, you only pay for quality applications that match your must-have requirements. Visit Indeed.com/lockedon to start hiring now. Again, that's Indeed.com/lockedon. All you have to do is sponsor a job post, and you will get instant matches that show you the candidates whose resumes fit your job description right away. That's Indeed.com/lockedon. Cost per application pricing not available for everyone. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. After playing 3 games in 4 days, all of which were wins over San Jose, Toronto, Columbus, the Boston Bruins now have a fairly light schedule here over the next couple weeks with only 2 games in their next 9 days before another 3 in 4 nights. Great work, NHL schedule makers. Just spot on. Wonderful spreading out of the schedule. High sarcasm voice. Now, up next for the Bruins, a home game against the Buffalo Sabres on Thursday. Then they will play a Saturday afternoon game against the Coyotes, still at home. I personally will be at a family event, so hopefully I can sneak down to the basement and keep an eye on that one. After that Saturday game, they don't play again until Wednesday, the 13th, which will kick off 3 games in 4 nights against the New York area teams, the Devils, the Islanders, and the Rangers. Back-to-back situation there. Islanders on Long Island, Rangers back at home at TD Garden. So plan accordingly here. We will have a full preview of the Sabres game on Thursday and of the Coyotes game on Friday's episode of Locked On Boston Bruins. And don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel so you can get breaking news, short updates there as well. As I mentioned, the Bruins still in first place in the Atlantic Division. They have a 7-point lead over the second place Florida Panthers. And when it comes to point percentage, though, the Toronto Maple Leafs second in point percentage, despite only having 5 regulation wins. 5. That is one more than Montreal and tied with Seattle and Chicago for second fewest in the NHL. Even San Jose, who used to be, the worst team in the league for quite some time, minus 55 goal differential, they've got 6 regulation wins. So that tells you perhaps how seriously to take the Maple Leafs at the moment. And again, I said on Friday, expect that game to go to a shootout. It went to overtime, very close to being a shootout. But on tomorrow's episode, we will completely update the Atlantic Division power rankings, where Boston's next opponent may have slipped down to 8th place in very disappointing fashion, considering some elevated expectations for the Buffalo Sabres this season. Anyways, I hope you are all doing well and had a great weekend. I mentioned I took the day off Friday to celebrate my birthday. Quick movie recommendation. We went and saw The Holdovers starring Paul Giamatti. Fantastic holiday movie. One of my new favorite holiday movies. Really, really enjoyed it. So if you're looking for something to watch this holiday season, I would highly recommend that one. All right, friends. I hope your week is off to a great start. And please take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. We'll talk to you again here tomorrow on a fresh episode of Locked On Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day.